It is time for On the Way, our weekly segment on all things considered, breaking down the week's transit news. Joining us is WNYC's transportation reporters Stephen Nesson and editor Clayton Guza. Well, it is officially the holiday season, and while many New Yorkers are feeling charitable this time of year, MTA Chair Janno Lieber not singing the same tune. Earlier this week, he said riders should expect a major crackdown on fare evasion next year. What's the deal?
So next year, Sean, as you know, is when the MTA officially, for good, finally phases out the MetroCard. It'll stop selling them at the end of December. And I guess if you load them up, you can use them through June. But the MTA expects most people will be using Omni.
Right.
And so with that, MTA Chair Janno Lieber says he wants to bring European-style fare enforcement to buses.
Ooh la la.
Here's what he means.
You can have validation of payment on a random basis based on having seen people who didn't pay the fare as well take place across the system. We can't do that now because as long as we're accepting coins on bus, people could, say I paid in coins or whatever, which is not the case. Nobody's paying $2.90 in coins. They're giving us about 75 cents on average and a lot of Garden State Parkway tokens from 1958.
Okay.
I'd like to see those.
Yeah.
So right now, the MTA has tried doing these Eagle teams where they send MTA workers with NYPD officers to check if people paid on buses, but it really hasn't had the impact the MTA had hoped.
Yeah.
Yeah, and a reminder, the MTA is also getting rid of coin payment at the end of the year, so if you've got those Garden State Parkway tokens, just dump them on.
Yeah, use them. Use them or lose them. Yeah.
Use them while you can. But it is a season of giving, and, the MTA chair is being quite Scrooge-like. We might as well call him Ebenezer Lieber.
Nice.
This guy's not even going to give Tiny Tim a free fare. But to the point, when he's talking about European-style enforcement, let's just indict that a little bit. He's really talking about just enforcement. And a lot of transit systems across Europe, specifically Germany, they don't even have any fare gates, but it's not an honor system. There are guards who walk through and check everyone. If you can't prove that you paid or have a ticket, then they hit you with a fine. And fare evasion isn't a big problem in a lot of countries in Europe. It's not even as big of a problem as it is in New York and a lot of cities in the United States with big transit systems. Years ago, I remember I asked Lieber about this, and he made a note that Germany is, quote, a compliant society. Ooh. That's to say New York City is famously not a compliant society. This is a very ungovernable place. And New York's also unique because our bus drivers don't enforce the fare. They're not allowed to. They're not directed to. After Edwin Thomas, an MTA bus driver, was stabbed enforcing the fare. He died. Was murdered in Brooklyn in 2008. And the MTA says they really don't have any method to turn this around right now. And they say about half of all bus drivers don't even bother to pay. It costs them hundreds of millions of dollars, they say.
Wow. And we ask them about this all the time. And Lieber blames the COVID pandemic when buses were free for 6 months. I guess he believes, riders still want it to be free.
Yeah.
But, Omni's coming, but it really, from what we've seen, is imperfect. We've seen reports of people who say they paid their subway fare, got the free transfer to the bus, but it doesn't register on the devices people are checking. The MTA denies this. We've heard about bugs throughout the system, credit cards being overcharged and then not charged, and cards not working. The MTA, again, is like, well, we fixed those problems. They're continuing to fix them. I think you reported on an Omni outage this evening.
Sure did, yeah.
So, there's just a lot of nervousness from folks about switching to Omni full-time, and we'll see how this European validation works with only Omni.
Yeah, and it's kind of rich, him making a European comparison, because he refuses to accept any comparisons to Europe in so many other ways. He always, whenever he's asked about, our high cost of transit construction and our lack thereof compared to a lot of European cities, he says, oh, that's apples to oranges. There's all kinds of other reasons. Many European systems are also much more modern. They were built more recently. They're newer. They're cleaner. They don't run 24 hours as much. But the rider experience kind of is more gives you maybe a better reason to pay the fare. You feel like you're getting what you pay for.
Yeah, can confirm. On to something highlighted in this week's On the Way newsletter. Today is a so-called Gridlock Alert Day. That's when the city declares a traffic emergency. If you're in your car right now listening to us in Manhattan, maybe you didn't get that alert, so apologies to you if you're sitting in traffic right now. Stephen, you point out that the MTA actually has a tool to help reduce gridlock in Manhattan, but Governor Hochul is preventing them from using it.
Part of the congestion pricing rules that were passed included a provision that on Gridlock Alert days, like today, like tomorrow, the MTA can actually charge 25% more than the base toll. Okay. There's 20 of these days on the calendar this year. As a little Christmas present to drivers last year, Hochul announced on Christmas Eve that she had instructed the MTA not to institute this charge, this 25% surcharge. So they haven't, and the governor's office says they won't. Okay. They'll review the data, but they're not going to make any changes anytime soon.
Right. Remember, Hochul already lowered the congestion pricing toll. It was supposed to launch in mid last year. She delayed it until after the election. It was supposed to launch at a $15 base price. Afterwards, she lowered it to $9, and she's really pointed to that as an example of how important affordability is to her. I mean, the Democrats got whooped last year amid concerns of a cost of living. Zohran Mamdani just was elected mayor, campaigning on making the city more affordable. Right. Albeit Mamdani is a big supporter of congestion pricing. He wants to, he likes that the money from the tolls goes to helping the transit system. So, but don't expect Hochul to amp up that meter, use that lever to try and keep people out of driving from Manhattan by increasing the price.
Yeah. And it really is ultimately a political issue, and Hochul is facing an election next year. So experts say it probably wouldn't be wise to institute an additional congestion charge at the moment. I spoke with New York City legend and NYU professor Mitchell Moss.
Having a surcharge on the holidays would just aggravate the opposition to it. So I think it's a great idea, but not this year.
Okay. Moss, yeah, he makes another interesting point that folks are kind of used to the charge now and they accept it. And, even the MTA has been boasting it's got a balanced budget again this year. So it doesn't actually sound like they need more money. They don't need that 25% bonus. Although advocates will point out that it's a potent tool for reducing congestion in the city that really just isn't being used.
Okay. Now, every week in our On the Way newsletter, we answer a question from a curious commuter. This is a timely one. It's from John in Queens, who asks, I know the M train will begin using the 63rd Street tunnel starting Monday. Will the M remain a Queens local all the way to Queens Plaza or break off at Roosevelt Avenue like the F train does now? Stephen, what's the deal?
John's talking about what we're fondly calling here the subway switcheroo.
Right.
The M train will remain local all the way to Queens Plaza, but once it reaches that stop, M train riders will want to switch to the F. This is part of the MTA's effort to unclog a pesky bottleneck at Queens Plaza. That's where the E and M trains must cross paths. This causes a delay because they hold each other up, and that delay ripples across the system. The E, F, M, and R lines all see delays. It's kind of wild, maybe dizzying, particularly for folks who are used to taking the F and M between Queens and Manhattan. So be sure to check the new maps. They're out there, especially for folks going to Roosevelt Island. That will be served by the M during the day now.
Okay. Right.
And Court Square, that busy hub for G and E riders, you'll be able to transfer to the F train there, which is fun.
Right. Long and short, the M's going to be local. And just a point of context about this change, it's this tunnel, that 63rd Street tunnel, it currently carries the F train. This isn't like this revolutionary change to the city's transit map or subway map. It's always evolving and changing. But that's the newest tunnel in the city. It didn't even start carrying subway trains till '89, but they kind of dead-ended in Queensbridge. They connected it to the other Queens Boulevard lines in 2001. It's actually this tunnel's fascinating. It's our only double-decker multi-use tunnel. Yeah, pretty cool, right? Subways run on the top. Long Island Railroad runs on the bottom. Those Long Island Railroad trains go to Grand Central Madison. It's part of the East Side Access. It took forever to build, but it's a fascinating tunnel project, and it's a new guy. It's our newest tunnel.
Yeah, well, eat your heart out, Europe. Thanks to John for the question, and WNYC Stephen Nesson and Clayton Guza. You can stay in the know on all things transit or ask a question of your own by signing up for our weekly newsletter at gothamist.com/ontheway. My friends, thanks so much.
Thank you.